Tobe Hooper didn't just make horror films, he made fever dreams that felt ripped from the American subconscious. His work captures something raw and primal, the rot beneath suburban comfort, the violence hiding in family dinners, the way ordinary spaces can become traps. From the scorching Texas heat of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to the haunted suburban glow of Poltergeist, Hooper built a career on making the familiar feel alien. Chainsaws, carnival rides, television static, he turned everyday objects into instruments of terror. His camera lingered on decay, on the breakdown of sanity and flesh, finding beauty in the grotesque. These 10 films trace that vision, from backwoods brutality to cosmic horror, from ghost stories to body horror nightmares. A journey through one of horror's most uncompromising minds, where survival is never guaranteed and madness always feels close. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like evidence. Shot in the suffocating Texas heat on a minuscule budget, Tobe Hooper's breakthrough is relentless, ugly, and hypnotic. A group of friends traveling through rural Texas stumble upon a farmhouse where a family of cannibals has made slaughter their way of life. What follows isn't a typical horror narrative, but a descent into pure, sweaty nightmare. Hooper strips away everything but raw sensory assault. The film is all grinding machinery, animal sounds, and the oppressive hum of cicadas under a merciless sun. The violence, despite the title's promise, is largely implied. The true horror comes from atmosphere, sound design, and the feeling that you've wandered into a place where civilization ended long ago. Leatherface, the chainsaw-wielding maniac in human skin, becomes an instant icon not through dialogue but through pure wordless menace. Marilyn Burns's performance as Sally Hardesty anchors the chaos with genuine terror. Her screams feel real because the shoot was genuinely punishing. The dinner scene remains one of horror's most nightmarish sequences, prolonged, absurd, and unbearably tense. Hooper shoots it like a perverse family gathering, where the American dream has rotted into something unrecognizable. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre became a cultural lightning rod, banned, celebrated, analyzed endlessly. Its influence is immeasurable, launching the slasher genre while remaining far stranger and more unsettling than anything that followed. Hooper had announced himself as a filmmaker who understood that true horror doesn't need explanation. It just needs to feel inescapable. Eaten Alive, 1976. After the raw documentary feel of Chainsaw, Hooper pivoted to something more artificial and fever dream surreal with Eaten Alive. The film follows guests at a decrepit roadside motel run by Judd, an unhinged proprietor who feeds unlucky visitors to his pet crocodile living in the swamp below. It's Southern Gothic horror filtered through Technicolor madness, shot almost entirely on sound stages with artificial fog and garish lighting. Where Chainsaw felt like stumbling into hell, Eaten Alive feels like being trapped inside someone's psychotic break. Neville Brand plays Judd with wild-eyed intensity, muttering and raving as he stalks his property with a scythe. The theatrical setting, clearly fake trees, day-glow lighting, constant fog, creates disorientation rather than immersion. Nothing feels real, which somehow makes everything more disturbing. The cast includes genre legends: Mel Ferrer, Carolyn Jones, William Finley, and a young Robert Englund in an early role. Marilyn Burns returns from Chainsaw, trading one nightmare for another. Each character stumbles through Hooper's artificial swamp, like figures in a hallucination. Eaten Alive was rougher and meaner than audiences expected, earning mixed reactions on release. Time has been kinder. Its artificiality now reads as bold stylization rather than limitation. Hooper wasn't trying to recreate Chainsaw's realism. He was building a different kind of trap, one where reality itself had warped. The film remains a strange, unnerving detour in his filmography, proof that his vision could be just as unsettling when filtered through theatrical madness. Salem's Lot, 1979. Tobe Hooper brought Stephen King's vampire epic to television and somehow made it more terrifying than most theatrical horror of the era. Originally a two-part miniseries, Salem's Lot follows writer Ben Mears returning to his childhood hometown, only to discover that an ancient vampire has taken residence in the long-abandoned Marston house. As the undead spread through the community, the entire town becomes infected. Neighbors, children, friends, until no one can be trusted. Working within network television restrictions, Hooper couldn't rely on gore, so he leaned into atmosphere and dread. The result is genuinely chilling. Slow-burn horror, where every shadow feels threatening and every window could hide something waiting. The film's most iconic image, the Glick boy floating outside his brother's window, scratching to be let in, remains one of horror's most effective jump scares, made terrifying through simplicity and timing. David Soul plays Ben with haunted determination, while James Mason brings aristocratic menace as Straker, the vampire's human familiar. But it's Reggie Nalder's Count Barlow who haunts the film, a grotesque rat-faced creature inspired by Nosferatu rather than suave Dracula interpretations. His appearances are brief but unforgettable, transforming him into pure nightmare fuel. Hooper proves he could build dread without relying on explicit violence, using long takes, ominous framing, and Harry Suckman's unsettling score to create pervasive unease. Salem's Lot demonstrated that television horror could compete with theatrical releases when given the right vision. It remains one of the best King adaptations and proof that Hooper's talent extended beyond backwoods brutality into Gothic elegance. The Funhouse, 1981. The Funhouse takes the familiar teenage slasher formula and traps it inside a carnival, a space designed for fun that becomes a maze of neon-lit terror. Four teenagers decide to spend the night inside a carnival funhouse as a prank, but they witness something they shouldn't. Now trapped inside with a killer and his equally twisted family, survival means navigating a labyrinth of mechanical horrors and hidden passages. Hooper treats the carnival setting with remarkable attention to atmosphere. The funhouse itself becomes the film's true monster. All flickering lights, distorted mirrors, animatronic grotesques, and hidden machinery that could crush you as easily as entertain. Cinematographer Andrew Laszlo bathes everything in lurid carnival colors, creating a visual nightmare that's both garish and beautiful. The setting feels genuinely disorienting, like being lost inside someone else's twisted childhood memory. Elizabeth Berridge leads the cast as Amy, the final girl who must use intelligence and determination to survive. The supporting teens feel like real people rather than slasher archetypes, which makes their predicament more affecting. Sylvia Miles brings Carnivalesque menace as the fortune teller, while the deformed killer, credited as the monster, is played with tragic animalistic intensity. Unlike the raw brutality of Chainsaw or the Gothic elegance of Salem's Lot, the Funhouse represents Hooper exploring pure cinematic craft. The film moves with patience, building dread through environment and suggestion before unleashing violence. It's a reminder that Hooper could work within genre conventions while still making something distinctly his own. Poltergeist, 1982. Poltergeist remains one of the most debated films in horror history, not just for its content, but for questions about who truly directed it. Officially a Tobe Hooper film, produced and co-written by Steven Spielberg, the production was marked by rumors that Spielberg dominated creative control. Regardless of authorship disputes, the final product is a masterpiece of suburban ghost story horror that captures both filmmakers' sensibilities. The Freeling family lives in a planned California community where everything seems perfect, until their youngest daughter Carol Ann makes contact with spirits through the television static. What begins as harmless phenomena quickly escalates into genuine terror as the house itself becomes possessed, and Carol Ann is pulled into another dimension. The family must fight to bring her back before she's lost forever. The film balances Spielberg's warmth and wonder with Hooper's understanding of violation and dread. JoBeth Williams and Craig T. Nelson ground the story as parents whose safe suburban world collapses into nightmare. Zelda Rubinstein steals scenes as Tangina, the spiritual medium who understands what they're facing. The child performances, particularly Heather O'Rourke as Carol Ann, add vulnerability that makes the horror feel genuinely threatening. ILM's special effects remain impressive. The climactic sequence, Where the House Consumes Itself is spectacular practical work. But the film's real power comes from transforming the familiar into something hostile. Swimming pools, closets, television sets all become potential threats. Poltergeist succeeded as both blockbuster entertainment and genuinely unsettling horror, proving that mass appeal and real scares weren't mutually exclusive. Whether Hooper or Spielberg guided it more, the result captures suburban anxiety in ways that still resonate. Lifeforce, 1985. Lifeforce is Tobe Hooper Unbound, a gonzo sci-fi vampire epic that swings wildly between cosmic horror, body invasion, and apocalyptic chaos. A space shuttle mission discovers a derelict alien spacecraft hiding in Halley's Comet's tail, containing 3 humanoid beings in suspended animation. When brought to Earth, one of them, a beautiful woman, awakens and begins draining life energy from humans, transforming London into a city of desiccated zombies while she searches for something far more sinister. This is Hooper working with a substantial budget courtesy of Cannon Films, and he uses every penny to create ambitious, absurd spectacle. The film careens between genres, space exploration, vampire mythology, zombie outbreak, and metaphysical madness, rarely pausing to explain itself. Matilda May plays the space vampire with otherworldly presence, while Steve Railsback delivers an increasingly unhinged performance as the astronaut obsessed with stopping her. Patrick Stewart appears in a memorably bizarre supporting role. The special effects by John Dykstra range from stunning to campy, particularly the climactic scenes of naked vampires ascending over apocalyptic London. Henry Mancini's bombastic score adds operatic grandeur to the chaos. The film's tone is impossible to pin down, genuinely frightening one moment, absurdly over-the-top the next, sometimes both simultaneously. Lifeforce bombed on release and confused critics, but time has revealed it as a glorious mess, a film that refuses to be contained by logic or restraint. It's Hooper embracing maximalism, throwing every wild idea at the screen, and reveling in the madness. Where his early films were claustrophobic nightmares, Lifeforce is cosmic delirium, proving his vision could scale from Texas farmhouses to the end of the world. Here. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, 1986. 13 years after the original, Hooper returned to Leatherface and the Sawyer family. But this time, he was laughing. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 abandons the first film's grim realism for pitch-black comedy and over-the-top gore. A radio DJ accidentally records a chainsaw attack and becomes the target of the cannibalistic family, now operating out of an abandoned amusement park and selling their special chili at cook-offs. A former Texas Ranger obsessed with the family joins her to finally bring them down. Where the original was suffocating and brutal, the sequel is theatrical and manic. Dennis Hopper brings unhinged energy as the revenge-obsessed Ranger, chainsaw dueling his way through the finale. Caroline Williams plays the DJ with real toughness and humor, refusing to be just a victim. But it's Bill Moseley as Chop Top, Leatherface's Vietnam vet brother, who steals the film, delivering one of horror's most quotable, deranged performances. Tom Savini's gore effects are spectacular and excessive, finally delivering the explicit violence the first film only implied. The abandoned amusement park setting becomes a grotesque funhouse, all decay and neon, where the Sawyer family performs their madness like demented entertainers. Hooper leans into the absurdity, turning cannibalism into dark satire about American consumption and family values. Critics and audiences expecting Chainsaw's intensity were confused by the sequel's comedic tone, but it's aged remarkably well. Hooper was exploring different territory, using horror comedy to comment on Reagan-era excess while still delivering genuine shocks. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 proves he could revisit his most famous creation and find something new to say, even if it meant laughing at the darkness instead of drowning in it. Spontaneous Combustion, 1989. Spontaneous Combustion finds Tobe Hooper exploring atomic age paranoia and body horror through the story of Sam, a man whose parents were guinea pigs in government radiation experiments. Born from that program, Sam discovers he possesses pyrokinetic abilities, the power to create fire with his mind, But the gift comes with a curse. As his emotions intensify, so does the fire, threatening to consume both him and everyone around him. Brad Dourif stars as Sam, bringing his signature intensity to a character spiraling towards self-destruction. And Hooper gives him space to explore Sam's growing paranoia and rage. The film blends conspiracy thriller elements with superhero origin story beats, filtered through Hooper's fascination with the body as a site of transformation and violence. The practical fire effects are impressively staged, with bodies igniting and burning in ways that feel uncomfortably realistic. Hooper treats Sam's power not as a gift, but as bodily betrayal. His own cells weaponized against him by government experimentation. The film's paranoid atmosphere recalls 70s conspiracy thrillers, where institutions can't be trusted and ordinary citizens become test subjects. Spontaneous Combustion arrived during a transitional period in horror, competing with slashers and supernatural franchises while attempting something more cerebral and political. The film never found its audience, dismissed as too strange and uneven. But there's genuine ambition here, Hooper grappling with Cold War legacy, government mistrust, and the horror of your own body becoming the weapon. It's rough around the edges, but it shows a filmmaker still pushing into uncomfortable territory rather than retreating to safer ground. I'm Dangerous Tonight, 1990. I'm Dangerous Tonight is Tobe Hooper working in television movie mode, adapting a Cornell Woolrich story about a cursed piece of fabric that transforms anyone wearing it into a violent, seductive version of themselves. When a college student sews the cloth into a red dress for a party, she discovers it unleashes her repressed desires, but also turns her dangerous. As the dress passes between wearers, each person faces their own dark impulses made real. Made for USA Network, the film operates within strict content limitations, forcing Hooper to suggest rather than show. The result is uneven but interesting, a return to psychological horror where transformation happens internally before manifesting externally. Mädchen Amick, fresh from Twin Peaks, plays the lead with wide-eyed vulnerability that gradually shifts into something more predatory. The cursed object premise allows Hooper to explore themes of identity and repression without relying on explicit violence. Each wearer of the dress becomes bolder, more confident, but that confidence curdles into aggression and cruelty. The dress acts as amplifier for buried impulses, turning normal people into their worst selves. It's classic EC Comics horror filtered through early 90s television aesthetics. I'm Dangerous Tonight lacks the resources and freedom of Hooper's theatrical work. And it shows. The pacing drags, the budget constraints are obvious, and the made-for-TV limitations prevent the film from fully embracing its darker implications. But there's something admirable about Hooper continuing to explore cursed femininity and transformation, even in this restricted format. It's minor Hooper, but it demonstrates his willingness to keep working and experimenting, even when the canvas had shrunk considerably. The Mangler, 1995. The Mangler is pure, unapologetic B-movie madness. Tobe Hooper adapting a Stephen King short story about a possessed industrial laundry machine that's literally eating people. Set in a decaying small-town laundry, the film follows a detective investigating a series of gruesome accidents involving the facility's massive folding machine. What he discovers is something far stranger. The machine has become possessed, requiring human life to maintain its owner's dark bargain. Robert Englund plays the laundry's owner, Bill Gartley, with theatrical malevolence, a man literally twisted by disease and darker forces, hobbling through his factory like a broken puppet. Ted Levine brings grounded determination as the detective trying to make sense of industrial horror that defies logic. The cast plays everything completely straight, which somehow makes the absurdity more entertaining. Hooper leans into the premise's inherent ridiculousness without winking at the camera. The Mangler itself becomes genuinely menacing through sound design, practical effects, and Hooper's framing, all grinding gears, steam, and mechanical violence. The film's climax involves demonic possession, exorcism rituals, and a runaway industrial machine embracing full gonzo energy. Released during the mid-90s when horror was dominated by self-aware slashers and J-horror, The Mangler felt like a relic from another era, earnest, strange, and unapologetically exploitation-minded. Critics savaged it, audiences ignored it, but there's something endearing about its commitment to the bit. Hooper was making the kind of unpretentious creature feature that had become unfashionable, refusing to modernize or apologize. The Mangler is Hooper at his most defiantly B-movie, proving he could still find horror in the most unlikely places. Eggshells, 1971. Before the Texas Chainsaw Massacre made him a horror legend, Tobe Hooper made Eggshells, an experimental, deeply strange film that captures late 60s counterculture through a surreal, almost documentary lens. Shot in Austin, Texas, with minimal budget and non-professional actors, the film follows a group of young people living in a communal house where something supernatural has taken residence in the basement, a cryptic presence they've dubbed the Thing in the Bathtub. Eggshells doesn't follow traditional narrative structure. Instead, it drifts through the daily lives of its characters, philosophizing, experimenting, existing in the aftermath of the 60s dream. Hooper shoots with a loose observational style that occasionally erupts into psychedelic montages and surreal interludes. The supernatural element remains mysterious and unexplained, more metaphor than monster, suggesting the lingering strangeness of an era ending without resolution. The film captures a specific moment in American counterculture, the transition from optimism to uncertainty, where communal living and consciousness exploration were giving way to something harder to define. Hooper's visual experimentation hints at the craft he'd later refine, particularly in how he uses sound design and atmosphere to create unease without traditional horror mechanics. Eggshells was barely seen for decades, existing as a cult curiosity in Hooper's filmography. Viewed now, it reveals his interests predated horror. The fascination with group dynamics, hidden threats, and spaces that contain something wrong beneath the surface. It's raw, uncommercial, and fascinating, precisely because it shows a filmmaker finding his voice before genre gave him structure. Without Eggshells' experimental spirit, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre's radical approach might never have emerged. Tobe Hooper's career was about extremes, from no-budget experiments to studio spectacle, from grounded realism to cosmic absurdity. But beneath the variety was a consistent vision: horror as violation, spaces as traps, and the American landscape as something fundamentally unsafe. He understood that terror comes from taking the familiar and revealing the rot underneath. Family dinners, carnival rides, suburban homes, industrial machines, Hooper found the nightmare hiding in plain sight. His best films don't just scare, they unsettle, lingering long after the credits roll, because they've exposed something true about violence, madness, and survival. If you love horror that pushes boundaries, filmmakers who refuse to repeat themselves, and cinema that dares to be genuinely uncomfortable, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell us which Hooper film still haunts you. Thanks for watching. And remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is someone's favorite.